This evening, we are going to hear about DVR's Business Relations Program. Business is our customer or their customer. And in the chat is a link to the handout for today. So you can download that and follow along, or you can just save it for future use. Today's presenter is Michael Kiser, and he is a member of the business relations team at the Florida Vocational Rehabilitation. He has, sorry about that. He has been in the disability industry for over 27 years, and he's worked in businesses throughout Florida to help connect businesses with qualified candidates. And he has worked in the employment field for people with disabilities in other agencies. And I will allow him to tell him more about himself. And then as he gets started in the presentation, and at the end, I will give you information in regards to the survey and also on how to obtain your certificate. So without further ado, I don't want to keep too much time of your evening taken up, but I'd like to welcome Michael Kiser from the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation.
Thank you, Denise. Appreciate that. And hello to everybody. My name is Michael Kiser. I have not completed my Christmas shopping yet. I'll reveal that little tidbit about me. Don't hold it against me. Really glad to be here. Thank you for taking your time. Looking forward to talking a little bit about Florida Vocational Rehabilitation, our business relations team, our approach to business, some of the methodologies that we use, and some of the successes we've had, and kind of give you things from my perspective in working with businesses and what we're finding out there, and hopefully maybe some tools if any of you all are involved with business development or job development that maybe you can use in your business relations yourself. Let me share my screen here. I do have a PowerPoint. And let me make sure that comes up.
If you hit that kiosk looking sign, yes, there you go.
Yeah, okay. So can you see my screen right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as we're going along, if you have any questions, I'm not going to have my chat window up, but if you can put a question in the chat, and Denise can let me know when there's a question. Don't hesitate to jump in at any time, Denise. It's more, I like it better if it's a discussion more than just me talking and going through the slides. Probably won't be an hour and a half total. We'll have time at the end for questions also. But let me give you a little bit of background on myself, just so you know where I'm coming from. I've been in the field really almost 30 years. I started as a job coach. Then I've been director of employment services for two nonprofit agencies in Maryland and here in Florida. I did work for a for-profit company that did job placement and development. I worked for APD under the Medicaid Infrastructure Grant for a while. For 6 years, I worked for the Florida DD Council as the statewide coordinator for Project Search. And now for the last 10 years, I've been part of the business relations team here in Florida. And for those who don't know, the business relations team is a small group of us. We're at 12 when we're at full strength. We're not at full strength now. And WIOA regulations require that every Florida or every state vocational rehabilitation agency have a group of individuals who are engaging in the business. And it's really about adopting what is known as a dual customer approach. And a dual customer approach is pretty simple. Job seekers that VR are working with who happen to have a disability are our customer, of course. Our primary goal is to help individuals with disabilities find and maintain employment. But with the business relations team, the business community is also our customer. So my job and the job of the team that I work with here in Florida and every other state is doing the same thing, is to engage with businesses through a variety of ways, and I'll share some of those with you, to find out what their needs are as a business and see how VR can help meet those needs. So you see my contact information. That's my work phone and my cell phone, my email address. Please reach out and contact me at any time. Love to hear from you. A lot of what we do is about partnerships and collaborations. I think the strength of a collaboration is greater than the strength of an individual or one agency. I'll share some of the collaborative events that we have going on and that we've used in the past. But anyway, I'm out there, I'm boots on the street, I'm talking to businesses, and I'm just going to share with you a little bit about what we do and how we approach business relations from a VR standpoint. So this is a generic presentation. Everything has to be approved. It's not specific to this group or any group necessarily, but when I do presentations, it's usually to businesses, whether it's one representative from a business, whether it's a group of businesses through SHRM or through an industry liaison group. I very rarely present to other groups outside of businesses. So what you're going to see is what I'm showing to the business very often. And you're going to see that that approach is very much about making the business case. If there's one point I want to make about what we're doing, it's really about increasing disability awareness, or we like to call disability confidence within a business. Disability confidence is really developing that understanding of what disability means. And I have this actually written down so I don't forget. It's a disability confidence is a framework that is designed to help a business recruit, retain individuals with disabilities. I have found that the biggest roadblock to connecting job seekers with businesses is the business's perception of individuals with disabilities. So really, I think what we're mainly doing here is, other than making a business case, it's changing those perceptions that people have about people with disabilities in the workforce. Businesses care about one thing, and I don't mean this in a negative way. It's just the nature of the way things are. Businesses only care about making money. When I talk to a business, or when anybody from my team talks to a business, everything that comes out of their mouth has to speak to one of three things, and that is how that working with VR, how that hiring people who happen to have disabilities is going to save you time, it's going to save you money, going to make you a profit. If anything that comes out of my mouth doesn't speak to those things, we're not doing our job correctly. It's purely a business relationship, despite the fact that we're talking about individuals with disabilities. So I'll go in a little bit more about the types of services we provide here in a second, but the biggest marketing point that we make is what you see on the slide here. We hold a huge untapped, largely untapped and underutilized labor pool. We will work with close to 60,000 job seekers in the state of Florida. We want to create a new talent pipeline for your company. We are essentially a cost-free employment agency. Now, I say cost-free, but the truth is, since we're funded by state and federal, a combination of state and federal taxes, businesses have already paid for us. So if you've already paid for us, I would say to a business, why don't you use us? I do a lot of training for job coaches. I have in the past, and I still do some of that. And I like sharing with them my opening spiel when I meet an employer for a first time. Let's say I'm cold calling a business. It'd be something like this. My name is Mike Kiser. I work for the Department of Education. I'm part of the jobs program. I see you have a position listed. I might have somebody who's a qualified candidate for that position. We are essentially a cost-free employment agency for you. I never mentioned disability. I mentioned cost-free, and I mentioned that I might be able to help them meet their needs. So this is really, again, this is marketing, I think, in the mostly, right? Sales is trying to convince somebody that they need what you have to buy what you have. Marketing is describing my product or services in such a way that it meets the needs of the business. So what I want to do, and of course, every business has one need, right? What does that need? They need employees, whether it's one or it's 100 or it's 1,000, they're going to need employees. So this is really, again, this is our approach: save time, save money, make a profit. And it's all about increasing disability awareness and increasing a business's or an individual's disability confidence. So these are the services we provide. I'll go into more detail. I might even circle back to this slide later. This is not a continuum. A business does not have to choose one, to have to go through one to receive the other. The business can kind of pick and choose the services that they want. Now, ultimately, the goal of VR is to put people in the jobs, for people to get hired, to put people into careers. However, we want to develop a relationship with every single business in Florida. That's our goal, to have a relationship with them. And if that business never hires anybody through our agency, that's okay. We want to develop a relationship. They want to know what we have to offer them. And there are other ways that we can work with them to help increase their disability confidence. So again, I'll come back to these. These should probably seem very familiar to everybody. It's what we do as a field in a lot of ways. And I will circle back to this. But again, it's really about creating that talent pipeline and understanding that it's a no-cost talent pipeline that we can provide to them over a long period of time. So the next few slides are really about kind of making that business case as well as dispelling myths that a lot of people have about disabilities. Now, some of these I'm going to actually give you what might be potentially a controversial take on a few of these, because I'm not necessarily huge fans of marketing some of these points, although they are traditionally what we have done and they can be effective. Going back to making that business case, the one thing I want to make clear is that we're not marketing to any business that this is the right thing to do, that this is a charitable situation, that this is good for the community. Remember, it all comes back to this is good for your business. So that large applicant pool, that's attractive to a business. Younger workers prefer more diverse environments. Now, there's a changing landscape in the business community, and we're seeing it a lot out of the big tech companies. And it's really being driven by some of the West Coast companies like Google and Intel and businesses like that. And they're showing through their own internal research that there is a direct link to having a diverse workforce, and that includes disability diversity, that there's a direct link between a diverse workforce and profits and shareholder profits. They're seeing that. It's not me telling you that. They're beginning to realize this. They're also beginning to realize that accessibility is incredibly important for their business. If you have a product, whether it's a physical product that somebody buys in a store or it's a software type product, the more people that can utilize that product, the more potential customers you have. And traditionally, especially when you're looking at software and these software companies, they've designed a product initially, and then they've had somebody come in to make it accessible after the fact, right? They found that it makes much more sense, business sense, to involve that adaptability from the earliest stages, to bake it into the design stage so that you're building a product from the ground up that is accessible. These are changes that have really been occurring over the last 10 years that we've seen a lot. We're hearing businesses talk about this a lot, how important it is. And this is driving these larger companies to really conduct more outreach and specifically design programs to hire people with disabilities. The other factor here is that the younger generation of workers, so we're talking Gen X and now, I mean, millennials, I'm sorry, I'm Gen X, I'm old. We're talking millennials and Gen Z, which is the youngest group entering the workforce now, that they overwhelmingly prefer to work with businesses that have a diverse workforce. They look for diversity. So there's many ways over that businesses are finding why diversity helps them. It's a tight labor market right now. It has been for a few years, and there's no end in sight right now. So businesses more than ever are need to do whatever they can to recruit talent. And then I'm sure many of you have probably known about the Gallup poll. There have been polls that are, some of them are 25 years old now, that consumers overwhelmingly prefer to spend their money with a business that has individuals with disabilities who are visibly working in that environment. So here's my hot take. Here's potentially my controversial take. We do know that individuals with disabilities tend to stay in the job longer. We also know that individuals with disabilities who employees with disabilities, I should say, miss less time. I'm not a big fan of marketing these necessarily. I don't know if somebody staying on the job longer is always a good thing. I think sometimes we tend to expect an employee with a disability to stay with the job because they should be thankful that they have a job. We're all about careers and advancing careers. Also, even though a business certainly might have a legitimate concern because their perception of a person with a disability might be, oh, this is somebody that's going to be sick a lot. We just want to lead them to the conclusion that there is no difference between an employee without a disability or an employee with a disability when it comes to term with absences and illnesses. You know, an individual with a disability on the job is just like anybody else with the job. They might get sick just like anybody else. So I'm kind of a little hesitant to promote that, just like I'm hesitant to promote the work opportunity tax credit, which is a nice bonus and a nice tax credit for a business that hires an individual with a disability. However, I want that individual to be hired solely based on the fact that they are a good match for that job. They're going to be successful in that position. They can contribute to the profitability of that company. We'll talk more about these numbers. I'm going to give some statistics, and I have a feeling everybody's going to know these statistics, but I think they're pretty impactful to a business. Now, this first bullet point on this slide, this is huge. We'll talk about federal contractors a little bit too and how this applies to them and every business. It is important to know that most individuals with disabilities do not require an accommodation. Typical accommodation, if one is needed at all, is, I've heard different numbers, $600 or under is the typical number. I've heard recently $300 is the new estimate. Workman's comp rates do not increase. That's important. Also, I had a business flat out ask me, I don't want my workman's comp rates to increase. And I'm more than happy to share with them that Department of Labor statistics show employees with disabilities have fewer accidents on the job than employees without disabilities. And again, changing that perception. You know, it's interesting. One of the things, I'll go back to this kind of corporate movement that's really coming out of the tech industry. We're seeing it bleed into other areas too, is that in order, businesses understand that we have to let business know, that all our employees know that we embrace diversity, and that includes disability diversity. So you're starting to see a rise in what are known as ERGs or BRGs. These are employee resource groups or business resource groups. These are groups of employees within the business that are part of generally what would be called a protected group. So you might have a group of employees who all have disabilities. You might have a group of them who are all female employees, right? Or who are all minority employees. And these ERGs and BRGs are becoming pretty influential. A lot of these companies have these groups, have direct contact with the CEO and other high up decision makers during their policy sessions and during their decision-making process. They're getting input from these groups. And this is not just for HR, this is for overall general functioning of the company, that they're finding value in getting feedback from these ERGs and these BRGs. So one of the things we're doing at VR is, obviously there's that boots on the ground. You have this job opening. I've got this individual has the skills and abilities you're looking for. I think they'll be a good match. That's great. I'll do that all day long. But if I can meet with the business and start talking about this larger picture, this larger diversity issue, how it benefits them in all these different ways, and how that they can start from the top down, developing this messaging from the CEO, developing these employee resource groups, then even though that's a longer, more time-intensive relationship, it ends up being much more fruitful. So when we're developing VR, these long-term relationship with companies, that's really our approach that we're taking a lot of times. So again, I think I'm, preaching to the choir here on this one. Right. We know all these things. I'm not even going to go through them. I think it's, you say, self-explanatory. So one of the services we provide is consultation on the American with Disabilities Act. And I'll give you an example of how I've done that in the past later. I'm going to give you examples of all the services that we've provided. But any business should know this information. Smaller businesses sometimes do not. When you looked at that list of services I have before, again, I want people to hire through us, but if they say, oh, you come in here and talk to me about the ADA for free, sure. That's helping me develop that relation and that connection. And now you have to be careful here. If anybody who's part of this group listening today is out there connecting with businesses, when it gets down to the actual legal part, if there's an EEOC lawsuit with the business, we can't get involved with that. We don't want to. But I certainly am comfortable talking about the basics of the American with Disabilities Act with any business, right? And, here's the definition. Not going to go through that, except I think the third one is pretty interesting. A lot of times the business doesn't realize that, right? In 1990, the American Disabilities Act, it was updated to make it much more broad. It covers, a much wider group than a lot of businesses think of. And so this does go hand in hand with the understanding disability, understanding what I mean when I say a person with a disability. So, number 2 and 3, a lot of times businesses don't realize that. Not only are they a protected group, but they are considered individuals with a disability. And one would be anybody who has a history, right? If somebody had a heart attack and they fully recovered from that heart attack, or somebody had cancer and they're fully in remission from that cancer, no signs of cancer, they're still protected from discrimination by the American with Disabilities Act. Even if somebody doesn't have a disability, but the business perceives them to have a disability and they do not hire or promote based on that perception, that's the discriminatory act, and that's prosecutable under the American with Disabilities Act. So this is the part that I think when I get to this section with the business, I start to get aha moments where I see their perception changing. I see their understanding growing, right? And it's the base statistics about what I mean when I say an individual with a disability. I always ask if I'm doing an in-person or even virtual presentation, do any of these surprise you? And a lot of times HIV or cancer, people will say that I'm surprised to see that. There are over 900 different conditions that make up that term disability. What do you usually get? You get a CEO, you get a manager, and they know what they know, and they don't know what they don't know. What I mean is they have a niece or a nephew who might be diagnosed with autism, or they've seen the movie Rain Man, right? Or they've seen pictures of individuals utilizing a wheelchair. And their perception might focus around that and only that. And that perception might not be of somebody who's going to help me make a profit at my business. So the following stats I'm going to give you are what I give them, and that is about 20% of the population. I think it's 19%. It's about 56 million people in this country have a disability. It means if you walk down the street, one out of every five people you pass is going to be somebody with a disability. It's much broader than you realize. There's 3.2 million people in Florida that have a disability. Here's another really interesting statistic. If you take all the young people who are entering the workforce today that don't have a disability, so it's all these 17 to 22-year-olds, whatever age group that is, they don't have a disability, they're entering the workforce now. 3 out of 10, 30%, will develop a disability before they reach retirement age, right? Disability is the world's largest minority group, and it's the only minority group that we can join at any time. And so what I want businesses to start realizing, and they do start realizing when you share these numbers with them, is that I already have people with disabilities working for me, and I don't know it, right? And the people that I'm interviewing might have disabilities, and I don't know it. That makes it even more important to understand disability and to embrace diversity. Also, what does it mean that three out of every 10 will develop a disability? You are likely going to have an employee who is going to develop a disability while they're working for you. What do you do in that situation? What resources do I have available to support me if that happens? Well, friendly, cost-free VR is always here to help you. Of course, any other agency that's out there can also position himself that way also. Again, it's understanding that the scope, and that it's bad business not to understand disability, right? Here's some stats I've pulled up recently, and I think I'm reading these because I don't have them memorized, but mental health is huge. It affects mental health diagnoses affect a large number of individuals. And in any given year, 18% of individuals 18 to 54, so that's kind of working age. I'm over 54, I'm still working, but 18%, age 18 to 54, in any given year, would be diagnosed with an anxiety-related diagnoses. Could be, if they were to seek diagnosis. That's 18% any given year. It might just be one time in their life. It might be recurring, and it might be chronic. 9.5 of that group, out of that group, 9.5% in any given year could be diagnosed with a depressive diagnosis. 26% of people 18 and older, that's 1 in 4, in any given year, if you took a snapshot, could be diagnosed as having a mental health diagnosis. So this is really the hidden disability realm that we're talking about. This is somebody that a manager or CEO or a coworker might not ever realize that that person has a disability. And it's essential for any business to be able to have the tools to understand that. Now you see Section 503 on the top of the slide. So Section 503 is a Department of Labor regulation. Anybody that receives money from the federal government to perform a service or provide goods is a federal contractor. Anybody who receives, I think, something like $45,000 a year, which is nothing for a federal contract, is considered a federal contractor. Now, of course, we all think about defense contractors, right? You got Northrop Grumman, you got L3Harris, you've got these, Lockheed Martin. These are big defense contractors, and they are federal contractors. But Walmart can be a federal contractor. Avis Rental Cars can be a federal contractor. There are many, many businesses. Anybody that's providing any kind of service to the federal government, these federal contractors are required to make, and it's not a quota, but they are required to make effort to have 7% of their workforce consist of individuals with disabilities. If they do not make an effort and show success in doing this, they can lose their federal contract. This is serious business, and they take it very seriously. So think about that. You have all these businesses out there that are required by the Department of Labor, and specifically OFCCP, that's the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs. What's unique about these federal contractors? They are required by law to ask applicants, new hires, and current employees occasionally to voluntarily self-disclose that they have a disability. Now that goes counterintuitive to what we think about when we think about the ADA, right? A business can't ask somebody if they have a disability. This is specific to federal contractors, although non-federal contractors can also do this. It has to be confidential. That information cannot be shared with managers or anybody else within the business, and it's only for record-keeping purposes. But it's the only way federal contractors can track the percentage of their workforce that fall under these different groups that they have to target. Those groups would be women, minorities, individuals with disabilities, and veterans. It's 7% for individuals with disabilities. So what I'm finding is a lot of contractors are coming to me and they're saying, Michael, I heard your presentation, 20% of the population has a disability. Okay. I asked everybody that all 1,000 of my employees who are making these missiles or whatever it is in my company, and only 1% of my employees have said that they have a disability, and I need to try to get the 7%. I know I have more people with disabilities working for me. What can I do? Well, and that's where we're working with companies on how to do that. And again, there's no easy solution. It's a lot of steps that can be taken, but one is that top-down messaging. It's showing everybody that we want diversity, we appreciate diversity, we strive for it. And the reason why we want people to disclose that they have a disability. And so that kind of goes right in to the strategies that we share with them, that we're helping businesses do this. It comes from the top down. You have to show that you're going to prioritize this. We're going to talk about things like OJTs and work-based learning experiences in a little bit, which I think are great ways for a business to start doing this. Developing community linkages. I love linking businesses. There are all kinds of great resources here within Florida, the Able Trust and Florida DD Council, and many others that I think are good. And then we have our community-based businesses, our community-based programs that we can link locally, and we're always doing that with our employment service providers. Just all kind of ways that we're helping businesses develop those linkages and those strategies. So let me take a brief pause. I don't know, does anybody have any questions up to this point? I'm going to start talking about specific kind of disability uh, services that we provide. But does anybody have any questions at this point?
If you have a question, you can unmute yourself or raise your hand and I will call upon you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
My question is when you were talking about this, I'm Susan McPherson.
Hi, Susan.
What about, when you were talking about people not wanting to disclose their disability, if they are working with Voc Rehab, can Voc Rehab tell the companies that yes, they have a disability, not have to tell them if the person doesn't want them, like if they had bipolar? Because a lot of people don't want to hire anybody that's bipolar. There's drama involved with that. Are the Voc Rehab able to say, here, we certify this person has a disability, but they don't want to disclose it?
Yeah, so if a business hires somebody through vocational rehabilitation, federal contract or not, they know that individual does have a disability by nature of what we do. But we don't disclose what that disability is. We can with permission, but we don't. I mean, I never ask permission. I never tell. It's irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. So they wouldn't know by hiring somebody through us what type of disability a person would have. And I don't know if that answers your question or not. They would just know that that person does have a disability, and that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, yeah, I mean, you can understand why people don't want to reveal to a business the lack of trust. You can certainly understand why people would not want to reveal that they have a disability to a business. Business has to do the heavy lifting and it's on them to create that environment and let people know that we really do embrace and understand disability. So, again, getting people jobs is ultimately what we want to do. Careers, let's put it that way. Specifically in targeted sectors, we focus on 4 targeted sectors, which are national targeted sectors, and also the state has 4 targeted sectors, which are the same as national. These are areas where we see great demand and need for employees, where we see higher wages and great advancement opportunities. These sectors are IT, transportation, healthcare, and advanced manufacturing. So we really do focus on those. That being said, I got somebody on the job training experience as a dog groomer assistant at a local pet spa. So, the sky's the limit. Now, I was at L3 Harris last week, and I was at the pet spa this week. But we really do focus on those targeted sectors, and we find our best tool for getting in the door with a business that has never hired a person with a disability before, or never knowingly hired an individual with a disability, is on the job training. It is time limited, and it is 100% reimbursed salary, no cost to the business. In other words, the business pays the individual while they work there for a set period of time. It's usually 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks. At the end of that period, that business is not required to hire that individual. So it's kind of a cost-free, obligation-free way to bring somebody with a disability into your workforce, work, be productive, make some money. It's paid. It's a paid internship, but it's not going to cost the business anything because VR is going to reimburse them. We found that businesses who participate in on-the-job training experiences 4.5 times more likely to hire somebody through us. Again, that hiring manager has this perception of that person with disability, and that perception is probably not correct. We are also dealing with the discriminatory aspect of this. But once somebody's in that door and they're working and they're side by side with other employees and they're being productive and they're getting along with everybody and they're a good fit, and it's our job to make sure it is a good fit, of course, that we're finding this is incredibly successful program. Now, some caveats here. First of all, not everybody is eligible for on-the-job training. If I have somebody who has a disability and they have their CDL license and they have experience as a truck driver, they are not going to be doing an OJT as a truck driver. They have the experience. But if you have somebody young or somebody who wants to switch careers, maybe somebody, let's say, who just at a high school has learned how to do welding with their uncle or something like that, but they've never really had a real job, then maybe doing an on-the-job training with a business as a welder for 12 weeks makes sense. Why? Because they are going to gain competitive, transferable, marketable skills. And that's the point here. So the individual in the on-the-job training has to benefit from it. It has to make them more marketable and increase their odds of getting a job within that field that they want in order to conduct that OJT. So in other words, if I have a business that says, Mike, I've got this big mailing that needs to go out, and I need somebody to sit here and tri-fold and stuffed envelopes. And I've got so many, it's going to take 6 weeks to do them all. Can you like reimburse me for somebody to do an OJT to stuff these envelopes? I say no. Why? Because one, there's no job out there which you stuff envelopes all day. Nobody has that career goal as I want to be an envelope stuffer, and there is no job there's no career that exists of that. Also, just about anybody, even somebody with a very significant developmental disability, let's say, is going to master that job if in not 20 minutes, 2 hours, right? So that is not the type of position we're looking at when it comes to OJT. But we found that this is an incredibly successful way to get our foot in the door. And I'll give you a great example of this in a little bit when I go through my examples. Yeah, so again, this goes back to ADA. These are ways we can provide support as an agency to businesses to know what they can and can't ask. This is important information. You're going to see some slides on disability etiquette. We also provide disability etiquette training. And the theme of that training, as well as the theme of what we would say when it comes to what do I do when I'm interviewing somebody who I know has a disability or who has an obvious disability, it's always the same thing. It's person first philosophy, right? It's see the person, see the skills, see the abilities, don't see disability. And if you're a hiring manager and you make your decision to not hire this person because of disability, you're putting yourself at risk of being sued. Bottom line, you're breaking the law. So you owe it to yourself and your business that you have to see the person for what they bring to the table, their skills and their abilities and their personality, or whatever it may be that you evaluate people on, not disability. Well, I'm not going to go into the details here. It doesn't really pertain to our conversation, but happy to answer any questions about that. Again, these are kind of real. I think I've kind of touched on some of these. You see the third bullet point is about resource groups. I will speak to this a little bit. Again, we deal with larger companies. I work with larger companies, and so you want, if there's an individual who's working for you and they have a disability, you've already hired them, they're doing well. If that individual feels that they need an accommodation to do their job properly or to even improve their quality of work, then you want to encourage that person to come forward. Again, most employees with a disability do not require an accommodation, but those that do are usually not expensive accommodations. We as an agency can often pay for accommodations. There are other groups that can help pay for accommodations. But what we found and businesses have found is that sometimes existing employees don't want to talk to their manager and ask for an accommodation because they know that each group within a business is their own cost center. So if you're on the manufacturing floor, you have your own cost center. If you're in the sales department, they have their own cost center. And you're afraid that if a company does have to pay for an accommodation for you, that's going to negatively affect your cost center, your maybe prevent you from getting raises or getting, new equipment that you need. So we ask businesses, and this is just one of many tips I'll give, but we ask businesses to create a separate accommodation pool of money. So if you do need to pay for a reasonable accommodation for somebody, then it doesn't come out of that cost center. It comes out of a whole separate cost center. And that's much more welcoming for somebody and more likely that somebody will ask for that. Again, focus on job performance, establishing ERGs, BRGs, disability inclusion training, disability etiquette training, disability awareness training, whatever you want to call it, is incredibly important. And we provide that service. And I recommend that any agency that's out there who's doing interaction with businesses regarding individuals with disabilities, that they develop their own. I found that if you can provide a free disability awareness service to business, they'll eat it up. They want that. Free, if people, what is it? There's a term that the sweetest words in the English language are a person's own name, right? They like to hear their own name. But for business, the sweetest word is free or cost free. They love that term. So again, we do work with businesses on reasonable accommodations. We we can come into a business. We have rehab engineers at our availability. We can look at a work environment and see where changes might be made to make it more accessible. We can look at somebody in a job and see how we can potentially rearrange the work area or use an adaptive piece of equipment. Businesses get scared about this because they see dollar signs. I was at a distribution center in Vero Beach. It's a 2-story warehouse. They're doing picking and packing and shipping out. And there's this old kind of iron narrow staircase that goes up to the top floor. And I'm getting a tour by the HR manager. And she says, I don't think we could hire anybody who uses a wheelchair because it'd be too expensive to put in an elevator. I was like, well, I'm not here to ask you to do that. I just want to, you're doing the same jobs on the first floor that you do on the second floor. So if you were to hire an individual who uses a wheelchair, they could just work on the first floor. They're so worried that we're the police. We're going to gig them. And that's not what we want to do. There's a term called universal design. And there's also another term I like called process improvement. And these are adaptations that are made to the workplace that increase the productivity of an individual with a disability, but also increase every employee's productivity. They just make the worksite better for everybody. It just so happens that maybe this helped one person specifically, and I'll give you an example. We're working in a hospital in Melbourne here in Florida. And this young man had to go into the emergency rooms, right? If you've ever been to an ER, there's a bunch of different kind of little cubicles separated by curtains, and each of those need to be stocked with certain things. Oh, I'm sorry, it was the operating rooms, the OR, not the ER. So it was actually operating rooms. And in these drawers are different items. And one of the things he had to stock were surgical gloves. So there's 3 different sizes of surgical gloves, and he had the stock to par. So he had to make sure there were 15 small, 15 medium, and 15 large, whatever the number was, I don't remember. So, and this young man had a developmental disability, intellectual disability, and all these sizes were mixed up in this one pull-out drawer. And so he would try to separate them and go through them and count. It was difficult. It would be difficult for me. It'd be difficult for anybody. And so we thought, how can we make it easier to count see how many you need, and then stock to par. And so we asked if we could just take 2 plexiglass dividers, right, that we would make, we would pay for, because it didn't cost anything, and then we could put them in that drawer and divide it into different sections. And one section would be small, one section would be medium, one section would be large, one section would be just kind of a trash section. They said, sure, go ahead. We did that. Easy. The individual, the new employee had it, boom, 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 stock to par, no problem, solved the problem. They came back to us 6 months later. They said, you saved us $20,000. What do you mean? I said, you saved us. So when you divided that up and separated those gloves like that, what it turns out happens in the OR or the ER, wherever it is, that doctors grab a pair of gloves, put it on in the wrong size. And so they have to take them off, and you can't reuse these gloves. And these are not the kind of gloves you go buy at Dollar General or Family Dollar or whatever. These are like real expensive surgical gloves. And so there were a lot of wasted gloves because they were all mixed together. By separating them out, it turned out that they were going through far less, and they actually attributed that reasonable accommodation, that process improvement, that universal design saved them money. Give you another example. I had a young man, this is also a stocking position at an auto parts store. And there were a lot of little bins with smaller parts, and they have SKU numbers written, and they're pretty small. And this individual had low vision for especially when close up. So he had difficulty reading the SKU numbers in order to see the part number. So we asked if we could take a bigger SKU number and just put it on the container underneath their regular one, so it wouldn't be in the way of anything. It was just larger. And they said, sure, that's not gonna, we'll pay for, as you said, we'll pay for it, we'll write it, and real nice and big. And then he worked during the week, and over the weekend, we came back on a Monday, and all the big numbers, somebody had taken them over the weekend and put them over top of the smaller numbers. Every one. And we went to the manager and said, we didn't do that. We promised we'll put them back. He's like, no, 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 no. Turns out a lot of people have difficulty seeing really small writing, and the larger writing helps everybody do their job better. So again, here we go. An accommodation helps everybody and doesn't cost the business anything, right? And businesses love it when you show them that. They love the fact that you can come in there and help them, right? They love the fact that a small accommodation can help somebody be really successful at the job. So again, more ADA. I don't think there's any need to get into that really. Yeah, again, more about accommodations. I think the more you know, if you're working with businesses, the more you know about accommodations and the more familiar you are with accommodations, the better. Technology, I can hardly even keep up with technology. I just saw a video of, it's a pair of glasses, and they're pretty nice looking glasses that somebody can wear, and it's for somebody who would be deaf. And if you're talking to somebody and they're speaking, it takes their speech and it converts it to text on the lens of the glasses so they can see it. And it's not like super obvious, I guess, to whoever's talking to you. And I just think that's just amazing. I went to a session, there was an attorney who was a keynote speaker, and she was deaf and she was blind, and she was able to communicate. You could text her, and her handheld device would turn that text into little posts that would come out and create Braille. I just thought that was amazing. And then she could text back to you. It's amazing that what technology can help, not only with communication, but also with helping people get their jobs done. As I just tell you all that you should be up on technology, I realize I'm not. I think it's a fascinating field. And I think technology is probably going to play more and more role in helping individuals with disabilities becoming successful in careers. So disability etiquette training, it's a service we provide. Businesses really love it. we can accommodate, we can do it virtually, in person, we can do, I need at least 2 hours. We're certified to use what's known as windmills training. That's a nationally recognized disability awareness training designed specifically for businesses. It's been presented to Fortune 500 companies. I think agencies like the CIA have used it. It's real interactive. Again, it's very specific to businesses. When I conduct these trainings, you see these aha moments in people in businesses where they're like, I'm starting to get it now. My perception was wrong, and now it's changing. It could be life-changing for people, and it could make a big difference for a group. And we're not just, this etiquette training just isn't big picture stuff. It's also just kind of, let's say let's say somebody with a disability is hired for a business. They might want us to come in and provide that. Let's say somebody utilizes a wheelchair, or somebody uses any kind of mobility device, or some kind of screen reader, or whatever it might be. It's understanding kind of the best ways to interact with people with disability. And of course, it always comes to the person first terminology, right? And a person first philosophy. See the person. And that's really the main message, right? Yeah, we're going to say, if you're working with somebody to use a wheelchair, don't hang your coat on the wheelchair, okay? That's a practical piece of advice that probably shouldn't have to tell you that. But also, if somebody has an anxiety diagnosis, and you're working with somebody like that, or you're managing somebody like that, and they start to, have a situation where they need to get out of it, right? They're having a panic attack or whatever it might be, having people understand, you don't tell somebody who's suffering from high anxiety, calm down. You don't tell somebody who is in a depressive situation to cheer up. You're not helping there, right? So we do give practical advice, and we find people really appreciate that practical advice. And also, that helps a business understand and work with employees who might have disabilities better. So this, this disability etiquette training has turned out to be really important for us and really helpful for us into developing relationships, proving our value as an agency to the business community, and ultimately leading to people getting hired. But these are just some examples of what we might, what we share with the business, kind of some of the kind of do's and don'ts. But again, this isn't a disability etiquette training, so I'm just showing this so I have an understanding of what we do. Yeah, so some of it's practical and some of it's big picture kind of stuff. All right, I'm going to go back. I'm going to give you some examples. I think we're just 6 o'clock, so we're at 5:30 now. And take about 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes to kind of share with you some of our success. And I'll share an example and the success of each one of these, and then we'll have some questions and maybe a discussion. But applicant search and pre-screen, right? This is how I'm going to save a business money. You have this position, you want us to fill it. We're going to pre-screen all the applicants for you. That's going to save you money. And we're not going to be 100%. I'm not going to oversell. I'll give you an example. This one is recent and it cracks me up. This import-export business here in Florida was looking for an outside sales position. Outside sales is tough. You're out there selling stuff, right? But they needed somebody who's bilingual. Now, bilingual is not unusual for Florida, right? But in this case, it was a German import-export company, and they wanted somebody with sales experience and who spoke fluent German and English. I don't know. Where are you going to find somebody like that, right? So I went to my counselors and I said, all right, this is the job. What do you have? Well, it turns out we had this middle-aged gentleman, had 20 years experience in outside sales, a great resume, but he was in a car accident. As a result, he unfortunately lost one of his legs, lost his job, had been out of work. He came to us. We were able to purchase him a prosthetic leg and send him through rehab. We let but it turns out that he grew up in a German-speaking household. He spoke fluent German. I went back to that import-export company. I said, you're not going to believe this. You got the perfect person. They met him. The whole interview was in German. They loved him. He's hired. It was a great success. And I've told that story to businesses before, and they always say, if you have anybody like that, send them my way. I said, well, you need somebody that speaks German. No, we need outside sales experience. It's a big need for that. I talked to you about sensitivity training. I think already I've provided that in Florida 100 times, if not 200. I mean, just if you're with an agency, any of you here involved in outreach, I recommend you put together a sensitivity training or look into the windmills training, which does cost a fee, but once you've paid that, you can continue to give that. I told you some about accommodations. Some of them are just silly. There's this company that does industrial sewing in Fort Lauderdale. They make body armor, right? And most of the positions are industrial sewers. They have this huge room, one big room with like 300 sewing machines, industrial sewing machines. Everybody's, in this room kind of shoulder to shoulder, and they're sewing the whole time. And we had a young woman, and not many people know how to sew anymore. You remember, I think at one point in American history, a lot of people knew how to use a sewing machine. They need people who do know how to sew, and but we had a young woman who, in this case, happened to be deaf, and she grew up sewing with her mother, and so she was looking for work, and we thought it'd be a great situation. They said to me, "We love to hire her, but we're afraid because she's deaf, if there's a fire, that what we'll do." And I'm thinking to myself, well, first of all, if she's in a room with 300 people and everybody's working, and all of a sudden 299 people get up and walk out of the room, and I think she's probably going to figure out something's going on. But we thought, and they ended up actually putting in flashing lights along with the alarm, which is a simple accommodation. And that's you're a big company with 300 plus employees, and you're making a lot. That's a simple and cost effective way. We accessibility, I had a company reach out to me, who had gotten in trouble with the EEOC. They had hired somebody with a disability, but they had a new manager, and the manager said that we don't think we can accommodate this individual, so they decided not to bring them in and hire them after basically after they hired that individual, found out they had a disability, and decided they couldn't bring them on board. They got in a little bit of trouble for that. They bring us in. We did a disability awareness training, but we also, in conjunction with that, they wanted us to go in and make sure that their work site was accessible. We were able to do that. Post-hire support. We have businesses, but we're time limited. We want to put somebody into a job, and once they're successful after a certain period of time, we're going to close their case. But we let businesses know that we're always available to them. We're always able to provide support to them. And always can we reopen somebody's case and go back in. And then our providers who are out there working hard and doing the heavy lifting, our employment service providers, they're going to maintain those relationships. And I'm going to maintain, I'm almost like an account manager. My team are like a team of account managers. Once we develop that relationship, we're always maintaining contact. They can always reach out to us. And that's an important component. We're always here for them on a customer service level. Dual customer approach, right? So retention support for current employees with disabilities. Yeah, I had a business not too long ago reach out, said we have somebody that's been working here for 20 years. And we know they have a disability. They've disclosed to me 20 years ago they had a disability. We all know this person will love them, but they're getting a little older and they're having difficulty doing their job. Can you help us? He said, sure. We were able to come in, meet the gentleman, observe him in the job, meet the management. signed them up for services. We were able to find another job within that business and provide support and training through a job coach or employment specialist while they're in there. We want businesses to know that we are there, that we exist, what it is we do, and they can utilize us at no cost. Talked about on-the-job training. So I'll give you some examples. Got a really exciting thing going on with Collins Aerospace. Collins Aerospace is an aerospace company. They have a location in Lake Susie, which is just on the west side of Lake Okeechobee. They make they make like those slides, those inflatable slides that come out of the airplane, right? The emergency slides. And they also make like really good industrial like life rafts. So if there's an accident or something, that life raft, those octagonal, those circular ones that have the beacon in them, they make those. So we did an on-the-job training with one person. They said, okay, I like your spiel, Michael. Here's the position. It's a production position. We're doing this, we're doing that. Then we want to cross-train somebody on multiple. So we had an individual come in, do 6 weeks OJT, another 6 weeks of OJT in another department, and then another 6-week-long on-the-job training in a third location. So the business is paying them, we're reimbursing the business. They hired that individual, did fantastic. We want to do some more of this. Well, at this point, we've had 13 people go through on-the-job training. 7 have been hired, I believe. I don't know if the 7th has been hired yet, but I think 7 hired. So it's 50% or more thus far. This is a rural area with not a lot of transportation. That's a high number for an area like that. I'm happy with that number. But it turns out that during this process, the HR managers connected some other Collins Aerospace businesses, and we've helped them expand into other sites, one in Colorado, one in Washington State, and then one in Illinois. So Collins Aerospace is owned by Raytheon Technologies. Raytheon Technologies, I think, is the 3rd or 4th largest defense contractor in the world. And they got wind of what was going on in this one location and now these other states. And they started to get involved. And the head of human resources and the head of diversity within Raytheon said, I want this program, this OJT to hire program in every Raytheon in Florida, which I think is 17 locations. And then after we're in every site in Florida, we want to be in every site in the country. So from one OJT in Little Lake Susie out in the middle of nowhere ends up this great opportunity. Now, it's going to be a long road to get from point A to every single Raytheon having one of these OJT programs, but this is the beauty of it, right? This is the beauty of a long-term relationship. I'll give you one more example. A lot of you have probably heard of Project Search. I was involved with Project Search back when it first started in Florida, and I was looking up some statistics that it was the first site, and I worked with them. But when I started working with Project Search, they already existed, and that was at Holmes Regional Medical Center in Melbourne. And I was looking online, and this doesn't include last year's statistics, but so Project Search takes place in a business, in this case, a hospital. Every year, 10 to 12 high school students with disabilities come in. They do their internship program the whole school year. They don't even go to the school building. They go to the business. There's a classroom setting. They rotate into different departments, and they're doing basically an OJT. They're doing a paid apprenticeship in different departments with the goal of being hired. I was looking at the statistics. 224 students have gone through that program since it started in 2007, I think. 87 out of the 224 have been hired by the business, and 91 have been hired elsewhere. And in large part because of the experience and the skills they gain at that. So that's a 79% higher rate through that work-based learning experience, that paid internship program. So again, that's why I value on-the-job training. And that, Denise, is all I had. I think we're under, yeah, still with a little bit of time left, but
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Kiser?
and I want people to know that please reach out to me if there's any way that I can connect you to anything in the community. If there's anybody you'd like to connect me to, if anybody has a business that you think that would be open to talking to me, always looking for collaborations and partnerships.
That's great. So, in listening to you, I heard you suggest a few things to the listeners, whether they are providers, employers, self advocates, or their parents, that they should know the ADA.
Yes.
They should educate all of their employer contacts. So, if you know an employer, you work with an employer, you should educate them. Know if
Yes.
if they get federal dollars or a federal contractor, because then they have to hire individuals with disabilities.
That's right.
Use that to your advantage.
Yes.
Promote inclusion in all of your communities and all of your environments. Also look at transportation, tech, and health, which is more than looking at food, filth, and fouling, because there's more for
Yes.
people to do than those.
Yes.
Use OJTs and internships to get an individual experience and in the door, because many of them also get hired by those companies. I also heard you say that we want to use technology for support and accommodations whenever possible. And with that being said, our January session is about technology for self advocates and accommodations for you and for providers. So hopefully you will join us on the third Tuesday in January for that session. And then you also talked about windmills. Can you send me some information about windmills and that disability awareness training, and how accessible it is for maybe individuals to utilize that in their businesses to promote disability
Absolutely.
training? That's a great thing that you can do, especially in October is Disability Awareness, Employment Awareness Month. You can offer free trainings to employers. Go in there and talk to them about disability awareness. Go in there and talk to them about why they should hire individuals with disabilities, and then work with getting people in the door for some exposures and things like that. So thank you, Michael, for today's training. And I am going to share a few slides with you guys, not many, and I'll also share the survey link with you. So our next training, as I said, is using evidence-based technology applications to support individuals with disabilities. And these are things that you can use while job coaching. If you can use it while job coaching, they can also use them on the job. And so we have two speakers who will be presenting in January, on January 16th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Also, the Employment Virtual Conference for 2024 is going to be on May 21st, and it is about technology. So make sure that you join us for that. Our February webinar is going to be on self-advocacy to increase employment-related skills for college students with intellectual disabilities. And there is the QR code. I will also put it into the chat so that individuals who don't have access to scanning QR codes can also utilize that. Any questions or comments from anyone?
Hi, the part of the screen is blocking the code.
Hold on, let me
It's like a
close.
black spot in there.
I know I gotta hide my meeting controls. Is that better?
Still,
It's still
like, I
there?
don't know if it's my computer, but it's like the bottom of it, very bottom of it.
Okay, use the link that's in the chat
I'm sorry, what now?
There's a link in the chat that'll take you straight to the survey.
Go into the chat. I don't see any. Oh, just take a picture of that survey. Okay.
No, if you open up chat, not Q&A, you should see.
I don't see anything.
You
Okay, I
don't
see
see
that right
anything
there.
in the. It says survey and it has a
Yeah,
link.
I see that.
Okay.
That's I can go online and do that. Okay.
Yes, you can go online and do that. And you should get your certificate immediately. If you don't, I'll work on that in January.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Michael, for joining us today. Mr. Kiser, I'm sorry, for joining and educating us
Michael's fine.
all the wonderful things that you share with us today. I
It
hope
was
that
my
everyone
pleasure.
that's on this line um has a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Enjoy your holidays. May it be filled with joy, love, and peace. And I will try to get this webinar uploaded on our website as soon as possible in January or February. I look forward to bringing more things to you guys in the future. Howard Bill says, good job. And take care, everyone.
Please visit our website for more information about our programs, projects, and how you can get involved.